All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, very excited to be talking to a European bare-knuckle boxing champion, presently undefeated on the King of the Streets circuit. I'm talking to Liam Wilson, also known as English Wilf. How's your day going so far, man?
It's going good, Not bad at all. We're training hard now. I've just been back to England, so now we're back in fight camp, so it's all good.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to get some specifics on that there because I'd seen, obviously, this being later in June, that the June 4th fight was kind of called off, that European title eliminator for BFBA, and you seemed in good spirits about it, but it seems like you have something on the radar now. What do you have going on and what's coming up?
Yeah, so that whole show got cancelled, and actually it's worked out a bit better for us because Matilda was struggling to get an opponent. My wife, who also fights on the same event, and for now it's been moved to the 30th of July now that she can get. Now she's got an opponent sorted, so we will both be fighting together again on the 30th of July. Still, it's a different opponent, but I'll still be in the title eliminator. So if both of us win this fight, we will both be fighting for the belt in September.
Yeah, is that the way you want to close out the the calendar year, rather? I feel like that would be a great accomplishment. I feel like you guys have,
Exactly, so that will be my second belt in my second organisation, and this will be our first belts together. So, yeah, I will do that for the BKB side of it, and then I will fight in August on King of the Streets.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to talk about that, the whole bare-knuckle couple kind of dynamic there. That's cool that you guys have been able to, make that history there, just, knuckling up on the same night there and everything like that. Because I've talked to different fighters where that can almost sometimes be like a stressful thing when you're like competing on a similar event to like someone you care about and have that connection with, but it seems like it very much motivated both of you. Can you talk about what that night was like and just the feelings and all?
Yeah, I mean, it worked pretty well for us. At the start, when we first started training together and fighting, we were never in a position to be coaching each other, but now we've like matured and like we found our fighting style and stuff like that. There's not many people who do bare knuckle boxing, especially in Sweden, so we have to train ourselves. So we've just fell into the roles now of coaching each other for bare knuckle boxing, and Matilda started coaching me for King of the Streets, or at least like being my training partner on the pads and stuff like that. So from the start, so although she's been inactive because we've had a kid and stuff together, she's always been doing bare knuckle with me. So it was time for her to get a fight, and we got it eventually, and it worked out perfect, man. Of course, it's not sunshine and rainbows all the time. It is hard. We're a family. We have a kid. We train together. We spend a lot of time together. So of course that it is hard to do, but as a whole, it works well, man. It works really well.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen vids of your kid like punching and kicking the bag too. Maybe we get another generation of competitor there, right?
Yeah, I think so. Now it's getting fun. He seems to enjoy it. As I say, we take him to the gym with us five days a week, and we're lucky the gym that we're in is really big. It's state of the art, so he has a lot of fun there, and he's been in there since he was like a month old, so it's home for him as well. And now it's getting fun for us because obviously he's starting to kick and punch the bags and stuff, and getting his own little personality. So yeah, hopefully the next generation, I think that would be fun to have for sure.
Yeah, it's great to see, man, for sure. But I mean, we're talking about like, Sweden, and you're saying there's not much of that like domestic, training presence with the bare knuckle. Like, do you borrow certain philosophies from like other leagues, other competitors? Just, I mean, like BKB and like, being out there, BYB, etc., BKFC.
Like for training wise, do you mean? Or?
Yeah, just in terms of like the, training camp that you and your wife kind of curate there.
To be honest with you, it's like we're self-taught, like bare knuckle side of it. We teach ourselves. We've never gone to anybody else for any sort of like guidance or anything. It all started when I started on King of the Streets, and then once I was, now I'm on know, and King of the Streets, and that was when we started training for the bare knuckle boxing side of it. It just all fell into place because I was. There's a few people who have done bare knuckle boxing over here. We fight on the same event in England and stuff, but as for experience-wise, I am one of the most experienced bare knuckle boxers in Sweden, or at least bare knuckle fighters anyway. So, I couldn't be a better person to start passing my knowledge over to Matilda, and I know what works. I always try and learn from every fight from King of the Streets. I always need to get better to survive there. So I always look for things that I can change and use to my advantage, with it being bare knuckle. So that seems to be doing well, and obviously we're doing something right because we're winning. So we keep doing our thing.
Yeah, for sure. Success is definitely there for sure, and yeah, you love to see it. But I'm kind of curious about King of the Streets. I feel like I have innumerable questions about all of that. How did that initially get on your radar? How did you find out this was even a thing?
So, I've done pretty much all martial arts, MMA, K1, Muay Thai. I started originally with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but when I started competing over in England, I did my first. I fought in left weight, my first bare knuckle boxing, and professional K1. And I was coming off 3 bad losses. I say bad losses, they were against really good people, experience, because I didn't start fighting completely from scratch until I was 27 when I moved to Sweden. So anybody who I fight has always normally been fighting since they were 12 years old or something, and I've always had to learn the hard way as I'm fighting. So I come off 3 bad losses, and it affected me quite a lot, and I needed to prove to myself that I still had the fire inside to fight. So I seen this King of the Streets on Instagram, and I started messaging them. I wanted to fight there, and Matilda was completely on board with it. She knew I needed that as well. I didn't tell anybody that I was going to fight on there, and just me and her went over. She was pregnant at the time. And that's where it all started. I won the fight. I got on really well with Hype Crew who run King of the Streets, and now I'm part of Hype Crew, and I'm 4-0 on King of the Streets. So that's how it started, and it's still going now. So
I was gonna say, just the optics of a lot of the things. Was there any consideration to some of the dynamics, just with it being on concrete? I feel like that's one of the big things for me. I feel like I've seen a couple of things in King of the Streets where a guy will bonk his head off the ground, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty visceral. What are your thoughts on all of that, early on and now?
I found now, for my first fight, it was never, of course it had been mentioned, but it was never something I really thought about much. I feel since I've been part of King of the Streets, and I've spoke to the guys who've been there from the start as well, and when they first started, the concrete was never ever mentioned, but the bigger it grows and the more people who are watching it, that's become a major thing. It usually splits people 50-50 of some people hate it, some people love it. That's what King of the Street is on the concrete. But of course, it's I've seen people come to King of the Streets with over 100 fights, professional record, and they think it's easy, but the concrete does play a big part in your mind, and if you let that take over a little bit, I've seen a lot of people crumble, even before they get in there, I can see on their face they're thinking, what the fuck am I doing here, But for me, of course, it's in my mind, it's something that I'm aware of, and that's why I always need to better myself each time, because I hear people saying when they want to come to King of the Streets, or win or lose, I just want to do it, but for me, I've seen people lose, and it's not just taking a loss in MMA. It's you can get fucking hurt in King of the Streets, and I have a kid now, and I don't want that to happen, so I'll do everything I can to keep improving, to stay on top of my game.
And you were talking about Lethway earlier, and that seems to be a big part of your skill set in King of the Streets. I was seeing some prior interviews where you were talking about how, the standing headbutts, and then especially the headbutts from mount, it doesn't really provide any defensive options, minimal to none for, your opponents there. Like, how much of the Lethway part of your training do you think benefits you in King of the Streets?
Lethway has been pretty much like my absolute like my solid foundation of King of the Streets. I mean, as well as everything else, it helps to be, in my eyes, I think it's important to be an all-round fighter in King of the Streets. You need to know it all, otherwise you will only get to a certain point. Because when they try and match in King of the Streets, they try and keep it stand-up to stand-up or like wrestler to wrestler. But, I mean, you get to a certain point where if you want to be the best, you have to fight the best, and the best is people who know it all round, you know. So I try and, like, it's important for me to know it all round, but Lethway has been an absolute game changer for me with the headbutts and just like, I've took the best parts of each martial art that I've done and learned along the way on King of the Streets, and now I've got like, my style of fighting is made for King of the Streets because that's what I've adapted it for. So, I mean, it works well. Lethway works, but it works well to know everything.
Yeah, I feel like I just have so many questions about it, like, especially with, like, the crowd, too. Like, is it, like, an invite-only kind of thing? Is it, like, known to the public before? Like, yeah.
You have to know someone to pretty much to get in there. Majority of people are, like, supporters of, like, some of the hooligans who fight there or, like, supporting some of the fighters, but generally it's not open tickets. Like, obviously they have to be very careful because it's illegal, and the location and stuff like that stays secret until the day of the fight, so it can't be open to anybody. But I mean, if you are vouched for, I suppose, by somebody that's fighting in there or is respected in there, then you can get in, but they are very careful about, like, who they're just letting in, obviously.
Yeah, I would hope the purses are also okay enough for something that's so, intense. Like, we're talking about the ramifications of something like this, but...
a lot of people ask that same question, but in all honesty, it's never been about the money for me, and even now, I would fight there for free. I really would. You only get paid if you win, and now my money's gone. I started on like, next to nothing, which I don't care about anyway, but now my money is quite good because I've won 4 fights and my money goes up each time. But as I say, it's not about the money for me. I would fight for free. It's you can never describe what you get in return when you fight on King of the Streets, and like it overweighs them whatever you would get paid any day. You get something special out of there, so the respect alone is like well worth any money that I could ever get paid there.
Yeah, there's a certain form of currency from dropping a guy with like a right hook and then soccer kicking him, eh?
Exactly, yeah. It goes a long way, and honestly, it's opened 1,000 doors for me, like fight-wise, and like promoters want me to fight on their events, and like just being known, in the bare-knuckle world. So it's really like molded a legacy for me already, and like I just want to continue to build on that.
Yeah, no doubt, I can understand that there. And I think one of my most pressing questions, I've been trying to figure out what an English Wilf is. Like, what exactly is an English Wilf?
Yeah, that's a very common question, and when I look back now, because I've heard a few people say, you should be called English Wolf, and that would be a lot tougher name, but that name is from, I was in the army in England for 5 years, and my second name is Wilson. And there was another Wilson there who was like a higher ranked person, so his nickname was King Wilf, and when I joined, I was like a teenager, so I got named Little Wilf, but then when I wanted to give that name into cots, they were like, no, you have to be English Wilf, because Little Wilf sounded even more gayer, but that's where it comes from. It's an army nickname, so it sounds like Bilf, it sounds like Milf, it sounds like all of them ones, but it's actually from an old army nickname.
I was going to say, did you not want to go with Lil Wilf because you'd think that people would think you're like a SoundCloud rapper or something like that, more so, or?
Exactly.
Well, that's an interesting backstory there for sure. And yeah, you were in the army for a bit there, and then I understood you were a tour guide for a bit thereafter. Like you were going through like Europe there before the Sweden move there. Do you have any fun stories from being a guide? Like, was it a pretty casual job? Were there certain like funny stories that popped up as a result of that gig, or not so much?
No, not so much, to be honest. Not as fun as the stories that I'm making now with fighting. Just being a guide was like an unbelievable experience. Like I got to spend 2 years of my life in Gran Canaria and France skiing. So for the summer I spent it in Gran Canaria, and in the winter I went to France, and it was just unbelievable experience. So it's something to look back on now, but I cannot do them type of things for the rest of my life. You know, it's a young man's thing to do, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying there, and just talking about what you've been doing with like the European bare knuckle boxing, but also King of the Streets. Like, how does the overall year in terms of strength of schedule play out? Like, do you have a desired amount of King of the Streets bouts and bare knuckle boxing bouts you'd like to take this year?
The bare knuckle side, I really want this title eliminator has been in my radar for since we started, and not just for me. It's like been a dream for me and Matilda to fight on the same night for the belt. It's like that's definitely one of our main goals. But as for King of the Streets, I will never rush King of the Streets. Like the right event comes up, and if it's the right time for me, is like not being in any way injured, I'd never go on King of the Streets unless I'm 110%. So actually, the bare knuckle boxing side of it and being in a fight camp, like for most of our time, it helps a lot because I'm always at my fittest, and I'm never doing a fight camp and then taking 6 months off. I'm like doing a fight camp, I take a week off and then we're straight back at it. So I'm just always like leveling up on terms of fitness and what I'm learning along the way. So as for our schedule, we're going to go for July, and then September hopefully we go fight for belts, then make more history, and then in August we will go again with King of the Streets.
Yeah, that sounds like a good schedule for sure. And we've been talking about how you're really teaching a lot of people technique over there with the bare knuckle boxing and Sweden and stuff like that. And it seems like there's a strong fight IQ minded approach that you apply to a lot of this kind of stuff. How cool is it that you're, really kind of laying out a certain blueprint for people within this discipline in this part of the world when, like you said, you kind of got into combat sports a bit later on?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It really is. And it's it's almost surreal to me that I get a lot of messages on Instagram and stuff like that saying people look up to me and they respect me so much as a fighter, and even the fighters that I've looked up to in the bare knuckle side of the world in England and stuff like that are also my friends now almost. We talk on Instagram a lot and stuff, and it's just crazy, man. And I'm super proud and super humbled by it all.
Yeah, for sure. Some great momentum so far, and it seems like the momentum is going to, be carrying on in the future for sure. A lot of cool stuff on the go from what you're telling me. But I want to be mindful of your time and everything like that, man. It's been great talking to you, but want to, let you go on with the rest of your day too. I don't want to be chatting your ear off too much. So anything you want to add as a parting thought as we're wrapping up here, man?
No, just I appreciate the time and the interest in taking interest in what I'm doing, and I'll just keep doing my thing, and thank you to everyone who's supporting along the way. That's everything.
Yeah, you can check out his exploits on the European bare knuckle boxing scene and also via King of the Streets, and great getting some insights from Liam Wilson, also known as English Wilf. So yeah, thanks again for coming on the show to reiterate, man, and hopefully you have a good rest of your day too.
Thank you, man. You too. Take it easy.